Have you ever thought your clothes could kill you? Believe it or not, some of history's most popular fashion trends were super dangerous. From shoes that made people fall over to collars that choked men in their sleep, the world of fashion has seen some pretty scary stuff. Let's take a fun trip through time and look at 8 fashion trends that were more deadly than stylish. Get ready for some shocking and silly stories about clothes gone wrong. You'll never look at your closet the same way again after hearing these tales of fashion disasters. A fancy but risky walk. Imagine trying to walk on really tall shoes. That's what people did with chopans. These were like super high platform shoes from Italy in the 1400s. At first, they were made to keep their feet clean for muddy streets. But then, they got taller and taller. Some chopans were as high as 20 inches. That's taller than some little kids. Rich people loved them because they made them look important. But walking in these was super hard. People would trip, fall, and hurt themselves a lot. It was like trying to walk on stilts all day long. The chopans show us how people sometimes do silly things to look cool. But is it worth it if you might fall and get hurt? These shoes put the high in high fashion. Think about how hard it would be to do normal things in these shoes. Going upstairs would be like climbing a mountain. And forget about running if you were in a hurry. People probably spent more time worrying about staying upright than enjoying their fancy looks. It's a good reminder that sometimes, being practical is way better than being fashionable. A pain in the neck. Next up, we have the Tudor ruff. This was a big, frilly collar that looked like a giant pie crust around someone's neck. Queen Elizabeth loved these, so everyone wanted to wear them. But they were not comfy at all. To keep the ruff stiff and fancy looking, people used lots of pins. These pins could poke and scratch the wearer's skin. Ouch! The ruffs also got so big that people couldn't turn their heads normally. They had to move their whole body just to look to the side. Imagine trying to eat or do anything with a giant plate around your neck. It would be super annoying. These ruffs show how sometimes fashion can be uncomfortable and even a bit dangerous. But that's not all. These ruffs were so big and fancy that they needed special care. People had to use a tool called a poking stick to make sure the fold stayed perfect. And if it rained? Forget about it. Your fancy ruff would turn into a sad, soggy mess. It's hard to look royal when you're wearing a wet noodle around your neck. Tiny feet, big problems. In China, there was a fashion trend that lasted for over 1,000 years called foot binding. It was a very painful way to make women's feet super tiny. People thought small feet were pretty, but the way they did it was really harmful. They would break the toes of young girls and wrap their feet very tight. This would make the feet grow in a weird triangle shape. It hurt a lot and could cause big health problems. Some girls even got very sick because of it. This trend shows how some fashion ideas can be really harmful, especially when they change people's bodies in extreme ways. It's important to remember that being healthy is more important than following any fashion trend. The worst part? Once a girl's feet were bound, she couldn't undo it. Her feet would be tiny forever, making it hard to walk or do normal things. Imagine not being able to run and play just because of a fashion trend. It's a good reminder that our bodies are amazing just the way they are, and we shouldn't try to change them in ways that hurt us. The killer collar. Now, let's talk about a fashion trend that was actually called father killer. Yikes! These were very stiff, tall collars that men wore in the early 1900s. They looked fancy, but they were super dangerous. The collars were so stiff and tight that they could cut off blood flow to a person's brain. Some men even died in their sleep because the collar choked them when they nodded off. Can you imagine something so simple being so deadly? This trend reminds us that comfort and safety should always come before looking fancy. A shirt shouldn't be able to hurt you. But here's the funny thing: even though these collars were dangerous, men kept wearing them. They thought looking sharp was worth the risk. There were even special tools to help put these collars on because they were so hard to wear. It just goes to show that sometimes, fashion can make people do some pretty silly things. Wigs gone wild. Have you ever seen old pictures of people with big, white, puffy hair? Those were wigs. In the 1600s and 1700s, wearing these big wigs was super popular, especially for rich and important people. But these wigs had some yucky problems. They were often full of lice and other bugs. Gross. People would use stuff like lard, animal fat, to style the wigs, which attracted even more bugs. Some people even put lead powder in their wigs, which is very poisonous. This trend shows how trying too hard to look fancy can lead to some pretty silly and dangerous situations. And get this, these wigs were so big and heavy that people got headaches from wearing them. Plus, they were super hot and sweaty. Imagine wearing a furry hat all day, every day. Some people even had special scratching sticks to reach the itchy spots under their wigs. It's like they were wearing a pet on their head. Squeezed too tight. Corsets have been around for a very long time. They're like super tight belts that go around your whole middle. In the past, some women wore them so tight that it was dangerous. Wearing a very tight corset could make it hard to breathe. Some women even fainted because they couldn't get enough air. In really bad cases, corsets could even break ribs or cause other health problems. This trend reminds us that our bodies need space to breathe and move. Being comfortable is way more important than having a tiny waist. But it gets even crazier. Some women would tight lace their corsets, which meant making them as tight as possible. They thought a 16-inch waist was the ideal size, that's about as big as a large pizza. To get their corsets this tight, some women would even remove their lower ribs. Ouch! It just shows how far some people will go to fit a beauty standard, even if it's unhealthy. The dress that went up in flames. Last but not least, we have the crinoline. These were big, puffy skirts that women wore in the 1800s. They looked like giant bells and were made with metal hoops inside to keep them round and full. The problem was that these dresses were so big that women would accidentally knock over candles or get too close to fireplaces. The dresses would catch fire, and because they were so big, the fire would spread fast. Some women even died because of these dangerous dresses. This trend shows us that sometimes, less is more. A simple, safe outfit is much better than a fancy one that could hurt you. But wait, there's more. These dresses were so wide that women had trouble fitting through doors. They'd get stuck in carriages and have to be pulled out. And in strong winds? Watch out! The dresses could blow up like a balloon, lifting women off their feet. It was like wearing your hot air balloon. While it might sound funny now, it was pretty scary and dangerous for the women wearing them. What we learned. Wow, who knew fashion could be so dangerous? From tall shoes that made people fall to dresses that caught on fire, these trends were more trouble than they were worth. It's funny to think about now, but these were real problems for people in the past. The next time you put on your favorite outfit, be thankful it's not trying to hurt you. Remember, the best fashion is the kind that makes you feel good and lets you be yourself. You don't need to suffer to look cool. Thanks for joining us on this wild fashion journey through time. If you enjoyed learning about these crazy trends, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fun history facts. Share this video with your friends and family, they might think twice about complaining about their uncomfortable shoes after hearing about show pants.